Concussions among young athletes are on the rise. In the last 10 years, emergency room visits by children and adolescents with sports-related brain injuries have shot up 60%.
Neurosurgeon Dr. Robert Cantu, one of the world's foremost experts on head injuries and author of Concussions and Our Kids, is calling for drastic rule changes in sports programs for kids under 14 years old, including modifying contact sports. Dr. Cantu is with us along with CBS This Morning contributor Lee Woodruff, who is the mother of 4 athletic teens. It's great to have you with us. Good morning.
Thank you.
These are pretty dramatic changes that you'd like to see go into effect. Why?
Well, I think that young brains are just more vulnerable to serious injury. Young brains are not myelinated. Young brains are housed in big heads on weak necks, and the same amount of force to a youngster will impart much more injurious effects to the brain.
What exactly happens to the brain when it's hit in a contact sport like football?
Well, the brain, in terms of concussions, it comes from the Latin word concutare, which means to shake violently, and that's what actually happens. And this brain essentially moves around inside the skull, banging up against the inside of the skull, and the frontal areas and the temporal areas particularly take the trauma, as well as the cerebellum in the back.
You describe children's brains kind of like bobbleheads, which is why you have one here with us.
Yes, I do, and as a Patriot fan, I have to say this is not a Patriot.
Pains you, doesn't it? Yeah.
But if you look at Mark's head and I hit it, it shakes pretty violently. And
Right.
it shakes like that because the neck is very weak in this structure. If that neck were strong and firm, it wouldn't be able to oscillate like that. And that oscillation, the extra shaking, imparts greater injury to the brain.
Lee, kids are under enormous pressure in high school to play a lot of these contact sports. How is it possible for a parent to try to curb that behavior if you want to?
I said a lot of prayers that my kids would not want to play football, to be honest, and not that soccer is necessarily, going to save you from any of these kinds of injuries. We all know that those can be equally as bad. But I think that what parents have to do is come together and say, how can we make this safer for our kids? I think we're all learning about sideline concussions and when we need to pull kids and not push them back in there with that shake it off, you're a man kind of thing. But we really need to come together on this. What we're doing is we're sacrificing the short-term glory on the field for long-term effects and health and well-being down the road.
What would you modify about the sports themselves?
Well, in football, I would eliminate tackle football. I'd certainly keep the game of football. Below the age of 14, it'd be flag football. Teach the skills of tackling. Just don't bash bodies and bash heads and bring people to the ground. Use tackling dummies to learn the skills. In ice hockey, it's simply full body checking is out below the age of 14. And in soccer, this one's going to be a little tough for some, but I'd eliminate heading because it's in the act of heading that almost all head injuries happen in soccer.
Lee, do you think there's a groundswell among parents to push for these kind of changes?
No, I don't think enough parents are aware of it. I don't think enough parents take it seriously. I think we live in a society where the sports culture is so pervasive. But I say to parents all the time, especially friends whose kids are in football, he's not going to be a professional player. Why are you why are you pushing this so
But
much?
colleges push for it.
Right.
I mean, colleges want to see the well-rounded kid that's done it all.
It goes throughout our culture. But I would add to you, putting helmets on field hockey, on girls lacrosse, what's wrong with that? We wear one on a motorcycle.
It's not only, there's nothing wrong with it, it's in the book. We think definitely, Lee, it should be done because in those two sports, almost all concussion happens from being struck in the head or face with a stick. If you had a helmet on with face protection, you'd eliminate almost all concussions in those two sports.
Wow. Dr. Robert Cantu and Lee Woodruff, thank you both for being with us this morning.
Thank you for having us.